A 10-year-old homeless boy, forgotten by the world and surviving solely on instinct and grit. But everything changed one freezing night when a soft cry from a dark alley led him to save a girl, or maybe two, being chased by dangerous men. Who was the little girl he rescued? And what happened afterward that forever altered his life? Listen to today's story and tell us where you're listening from. In the dead of winter, Chicago showed no mercy. The wind howled like a beast through cracked alleyways and broken windows. Beneath a highway overpass on the south side, Caleb Foster, 10 years old, pulled his oversized coat tighter around himself. His shoes, 2 sizes too big, were soaked and splitting at the seams. But it didn't matter. He had no home, only corners of the city that hadn't kicked him out yet. Caleb knew how to move unseen. He had learned the city's secrets, where diners threw out leftovers, which buildings still leaked heat, and which streets were safest to avoid after dark. That night, all he wanted was a warm corner to survive until morning. But fate had other plans. As Caleb turned into an abandoned side street behind a boarded-up bakery, he froze. The wind carried something unusual, not the usual sirens or clattering trash cans. It was a sound he hadn't heard in a long time, a child's cry. Cautiously, he followed it. Behind a dumpster, curled up and trembling, sat a little girl, no older than 5. Her thin pink jacket offered no protection against the freezing air. Her knees hugged her chest, and tears stained her cheeks. "Hey," Caleb whispered, kneeling slowly. "You okay?" She looked up with wide, terrified eyes but said nothing. "You lost?" he asked softly. She didn't respond, only shivered harder. All the street rules he'd learned told him to stay cautious. Caleb took off his coat and wrapped it around her. "Come on, I know a place." They headed toward an old boiler room beneath a vacant apartment building. Then, a new sound stopped Caleb in his tracks, a whimper. Behind a stack of trash bins, he discovered a second girl, dirty, trembling, clutching a broken doll. Her eyes met his with raw panic. The first girl gasped and whispered, "Lily." The second girl, standing up, cried out, "Sophie." They rushed into each other's arms with such desperation that Caleb froze. It wasn't just a reunion. It was a rescue. Their embrace spoke volumes. Words couldn't express how long they'd been apart, how fear had consumed them both, and how, in the cruelest of places, they had found each other again. Caleb stood there, stunned. These girls knew each other. This wasn't just 2 random kids on the street. No, this was something bigger, something darker, because if they knew each other, it meant they had been taken together. Or worse, one was taken, and the other followed. Now that they were found, someone out there, someone dangerous, was likely panicking. Someone powerful enough to make 2 children vanish without a trace and determined to ensure they were never seen again. Caleb felt a chill crawl up his spine. Who were these girls? What had they just escaped from? He didn't have answers. But he knew one thing for sure. He couldn't let them go back. Inside the boiler room, Caleb started a small fire in a can and huddled with the girls. He asked their names again. "I'm Lily Brooks," said the older one, her voice fragile. "And I'm Sophie Walker." The name echoed in Caleb's mind. He looked down at Sophie's coat, embroidered inside in golden thread. Walker. Could it be the Walker family? The billionaire real estate dynasty with properties from Manhattan to San Francisco? No wonder someone had taken her. The next morning, Caleb risked everything to take them to Maggie's Market, a small corner grocery where Margaret Harris, the owner, sometimes gave him expired snacks. She gasped when she saw the children. Good Lord. "Caleb, what happened? Are they lost or taken?" "I don't know. Please help them." Margaret led them to her back office, gave them food, and called someone she trusted more than the police, James Whitman, a retired journalist turned private social worker. When he arrived, Caleb recounted everything, from the alley to Sophie's embroidered coat. Whitman's face went pale. You may have just saved the daughter of one of the most powerful men in the country. Whitman arranged to move the children to a safe house on the outskirts of town, but it was already too late. As they left through the back alley, two men in black coats appeared at the corner. Caleb grabbed the girls and ran through streets, over fences, into junkyards. They kept running until their lungs burned. The men chased relentlessly, shouting into walkie-talkies. They ran until exhaustion overtook them. Then, darting into the old Belmont rail yard, a vast area of rusted, forgotten train cars, Caleb knew they had made a mistake. There was no way out. Shouts echoed around them. "We know you're in there." Caleb pressed the girls behind a stack of pallets, heart pounding like a war drum. He looked at them, terrified, gasping, barely able to stand. There was nowhere left to hide. Suddenly, tires screeched. A black SUV tore through the side lot, headlights piercing the night like twin swords. It spun to a halt just feet from them, the back door flinging open. "Get in," a deep voice commanded. Caleb hesitated. He didn't know who was calling. Was this another trick? Another trap? But then, the voice came again, urgent. "Calm. It's okay. I'm here to help. Richard Walker sent me. Name's David Cole." Caleb didn't wait. He lifted Sophie and pulled Lily to her feet, sprinting the last few yards. Shots rang out behind them, through the rear window. Caleb saw the two men fading into the distance, cursing and waving fists. He collapsed into the seat, panting, arms wrapped tightly around the girls. "Safe for now," David Cole said, glancing at them in the rear-view mirror, his jaw tight. "You kids just stepped into a war." He paused. "But you did good. You did really good." 30 minutes later, the SUV arrived at a massive estate in Lake Forest. Standing on the steps was a man in a dark overcoat and gray suit, Richard Walker himself. When he saw Sophie step out of the car, he dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face. "Sophie," he whispered, scooping her into his arms. She cried into his shoulder. "Daddy." Caleb stood back, watching. His job was done. It was time to disappear again. But then Walker turned to him. "Who are you?" Caleb lowered his eyes. "No one." His voice was barely a whisper. He believed he didn't matter, not in a world that constantly overlooked him. Richard Walker stepped forward, studying the boy, the torn shoes, the dirt under his nails. But more than that, he saw raw, unpolished courage, undeniable and true. "You're not no one," Richard said, his voice firm. "You're the reason I'm holding my daughter right now, the reason she's alive." Caleb shifted uncomfortably. "You're someone who brought my daughter home," Richard continued. "Someone who mattered when nobody else even knew she was gone. You saw her. You cared when the whole world turned a blind eye." He paused, then knelt to meet Caleb's gaze. "You didn't just save her. Caleb, you saved me too." For a moment, Caleb said nothing. His lips trembled. And, for the first time in years, the boy who had learned never to cry blinked away tears. He didn't know what the future held. But at that moment, one thing was clear. He was seen. He was someone. Richard Walker didn't let Caleb leave. He brought him inside, gave him clean clothes, a hot bath, and the first real meal he'd eaten in years. Days passed. Then, one evening, Walker sat with Caleb in his study. Richard leaned forward, eyes steady, voice calm. "I want to adopt you," he said. Caleb's head shot up. He blinked, unsure if he'd heard correctly. "Not out of debt," Richard clarified. "Not because I feel I owe you something. I've written checks before. Caleb, but this is different." He looked at the photo on his desk. Sophie smiling in her princess pajamas. "She calls you her hero," he said softly. "And Honestly, I do too. Caleb's mouth parted, but no words came. You don't have to answer now, Richard said gently. But I want you to know this door will always be open. You saved my daughter. But you also reminded me of the kind of man I want to be. I don't know how to be a part of this, Caleb whispered. Richard smiled, not with pity but with pride. That's the beauty of it, he said. You don't have to know. We'll learn together, one day at a time. Caleb's throat tightened. He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. And in that moment, surrounded by warmth, safety, and something he'd never truly had before, belonging, he realized, for the first time, maybe he could be loved. Meanwhile, Whitman uncovered the man behind the kidnapping, Charles Benton, a ruthless investor who had lost a $300 million deal to Walker. Benton's plan had been to use Sophie as leverage. When that failed, he tried to bury it. But now, Whitman had enough evidence to bring him down. Benton was arrested days later, charged with conspiracy and kidnapping. Weeks turned into months. Caleb Foster became Caleb Walker, adopted not just into a home, but into a family. He started school. He struggled. He stumbled. But he fought harder than anyone. Lily, who had followed Sophie, was now taken care of by the Walker family, living nearby with a loving foster family, a close friend and frequent visitor. Sophie never left their side. Years later, on a bright spring day, Caleb returned alone to that same alley where he first heard Sophie cry. He stood there for a long moment, whispering, "Thank you." The wind carried away like a secret between the city and the boy who never stopped believing. Caleb thought he was no one, but one act of kindness, one choice, gave him a name, a home, and a family. If you were walking past that dark alley on a freezing night, would you have stopped? Please let us know in the comments below.